Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Moonbeam Universe. Today, we have a very special guest, Michael O'Rourke, and we're going to talk about Pocket Network. If you never heard about Pocket Network, this is the time and the interview that you want to see first, because we're going to cover the basics, but we're also going to cover what is next steps for Pocket, what makes this project very, very interesting, and definitely in the subject of decentralization. It's a very important project for the decentralization value that we value a lot in this crypto space. So, Michael, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tiago, and really glad to be here. I remember talking to the Moonbeam founders probably like 2.5, 3 years ago, before we had even launched Pocket and before Moonbeam had launched. I just remember commenting, "You guys' design is amazing." Actually, I
Yeah,
just remember saying, just the whole retro Moonbeam. I just remember being like, "Guys, this is amazing." So really, actually happy to be here.
this is so cool, right? When you think about this industry, 2 years, it's a lot of time, right? I mean, this is a ever changing every week, like when moon stuff. I think crypto stakeholders are very anxious per nature. So when we see like more than 6 months, it's already a big change. And talking with the Moonbeam team like 2 years ago, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. A lot has happened since then. I think on both sides. I'm glad to see. We're both succeeding and thriving too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Maybe
Yeah.
we can start, just introducing Pocket, and you give your, few introduction of what Pocket is, to a non-technical and maybe even for the more technical people as well.
Yeah, happy to. I have a really short presentation. If I share my screen for a moment, happy to show it here. Let me know if you're seeing my screen.
Yep.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll do a quick. Just this will be very quick, but I'll do a quick overview here about Pocket. So just for a brief history. um, on Pocket itself. We've been working on this since late 2016. My background's in iOS development, and my co-founders and I were writing some smart contracts on Ethereum shortly after the DAO hack, kind of exploring things to do. And at the time, we used one of our centralized counterparts, and really saw how important infrastructure, how important of an infrastructure it was. And particularly as 2017 rolled along with all the ICOs, apps like CryptoKitties and this sort of thing. And I was going to lots of hackathons at the time, the first kind of ETH Global hackathons. And we just saw how important this layer was. And, I've been in the crypto or Bitcoin space since 2013, and through the Bitcoin Talk forums and the ETH research forums as well, you'd always see threads about people incentivizing full nodes. And it wasn't until I started kind of building myself, really saw the importance of this. And that's kind of how we started thinking about Pocket, to be honest. And we always felt that there would be multiple stacks above the core blockchains that um, are susceptible to being a bottleneck, to censorship, to capture, regulatory capture, these sorts of things. And we always felt that no matter what piece of the stack you're on, no matter what kind of application you're using, whether it's bridges or wallets or games, you're at some point everyone is touching a full node. So this felt like a pretty important part of the stack to really focus on, and that's kind of how we started thinking about it. But for context, Pocket is uh, a decentralized Web3 infrastructure provider. What this means is our network of full nodes basically loads data on your web pages. So when you load up MetaMask or MyCrypto, or if you play DeFi Kingdoms or Kerbata, that data that's being shown in your screen is served by services like Pocket. The difference being that we have a network of nodes all around the world coordinated by a protocol. This protocol is its own blockchain. By the way, it's built it's built off of a fork of Tendermint. So that's the kind of stack we've been working on. But fundamentally, all it does is an application goes through a portal, which is our product that developers use today. And the Pocket blockchain, if you see here, basically coordinates nodes all around the world. We have a structure called a session, but I don't think that's so important for now. But the important part is that these Pocket nodes are connected to external blockchains like Moonbeam, for example, right? And the request from your, let's say this application is MetaMask, goes to the portal, goes to the Pocket network, hits the external blockchains, and then goes all the way back to the application, so that the data, let's say your balance on Moonbeam, for example, right, will get shown to MetaMask. And all of this happens within like 200 milliseconds or thereabouts, right? So all this happens extremely fast, and it's just over the existing kind of internet that we operate on today. And really, the difference being that usually what you'd have here is a centralized company kind of coordinating these external blockchain nodes. Instead, we have a rent-free protocol that coordinates this infrastructure on a global scale, basically. And it's something we're extremely excited to be building and extremely proud of. So what does this mean in terms of the protocol itself? There's really two users. We're not a smart contract blockchain. We're not trying to be a transactional cryptocurrency. In fact, our block times are 15 minutes, believe it or not. And really, it's just for app developers and the supply side of the network, node runners, basically. So people use Pocket for a couple of reasons. Apps use it to stake and pay for their service, and node runners do it for collateral, for the right to do work within the network. Pocket's also a proof of stake network, and that's really important to make sure that we keep the integrity of the blockchain as high as possible, right? So why does this matter? I think last week was a pretty big reason why, with some of the Tornado Cash stuff. But there's also some really big benefits to using Pocket, which is a protocol, not a company. And we always felt that building Pocket in a decentralized way was important for us and for the actual protocol itself to be not decentralized just for decentralized sake, but actually provide large benefits or improvements on the existing status quo. And I would say that Pocket is more reliable, it's faster, and is actually cheaper by virtue of being decentralized, actually, which is pretty cool to see. But the fact that we have tens of thousands of nodes all around the world, if you've ever ran a node or experienced working with a node, you'll know that they're finicky at best. And when something's out of sync or not updated, it's really important to be able to go to other nodes that are nearby to get that information that you need, whether it's doing a transaction on Uniswap or MetaMask or whatever it might be. Pocket also basically allows developers to turn something that's an operational expense, like a monthly cost, into a capital expense, which means it's an asset on your balance sheet. And this is a big deal, excuse me, when it comes to pricing, because it's a one-time stake rather than a constant monthly fee. And it's also user-governed and developed. And by directly connecting to nodes, you no longer have single companies basically really accumulating all of your data, basically. So, and I'm really proud of the fact that Pocket is really governed by the community and its DAO, and it's a non-traditional DAO in the sense that we don't do token voting. It's actually what I like to call an opt-in democracy. So by actually participating in the network, regardless of how many tokens you have, you actually can claim a vote in the Pocket DAO. And we have around 40 people now that have claimed votes, which is really exciting for us. And yeah, just some quick data, some quick show. We're doing around 800 million to 1 billion requests a day. We have over 30,000 nodes across the world, and we have over 30 chains with, of course, Moonbeam. as a part of that. So that's just a quick overview on Pocket, and happy to dig into any questions that you might have related to it.
Several
Yeah.
questions. Several questions. Maybe we can start with the basics. I probably know how to answer some of those questions, but I think for the community to have a good feeling of it, let me give you an example, and you correct me if I'm wrong or not when using Pocket. Every time that we connect our MetaMask to a website, let's say Uniswap, Curve Finance, doesn't really matter. Curve or Uniswap, they have to choose Infura or some of the other providers to actually be a node. They can be a node themselves, right? They can choose to have the ledger, the updated ledger of the blockchain, with them and just use that information. But most of the times we rely on services which is centralized, like Infura, to do that. So you pay a service fee for them to do that, and they will provide you with information.
That's
Correct,
precise.
right?
Exactly right.
Okay. And what Pocket is doing is actually decentralizing one of more stages of the blockchain process in general, because we have so many ways to see decentralization, right? I mean, decentralization is a topic that people try to summarize into the token holders or the number of miners and so on. But there's so many aspects of decentralization that we forgot to see, and we forgot to map. And I think Pocket is really one of the kind that is actually touching the point of decentralizing the infrastructure of the blockchain, which is how we connect to the blockchain. This middleman, if they're centralized, they can be hacked somehow, or they can put some unreliable information in there that is going to appear in your website, saying, for example, the token price of some asset is different from what actually is. And decentralizing this part, it's what makes more and more reliable and censorship resistant. Is that a good
That's it.
understanding?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would just add that Pocket is part of a broader kind of what I call a middleware stack that sits in between, going to Uniswap and Ethereum, right? And that includes RPCs like Pocket, indexing, storage, VPNs, privacy. There's a ton of things all within this middleware kind of stack that happens in between you going to a website and connecting to a blockchain that is going to be critically important to make capture resistant, right? Or censorship resistant, in my opinion.
Right, right. Yeah, and how do you guys keep this centralization? Like when I'm connecting to a node in Pocket, I choose Pocket over there. Am I randomly being allocated to one of the nodes of the 30,000 nodes that you showed, or it's kind of an average of all the tokens, something like that, all the nodes?
Yeah, so every node has the same chance of doing work within Pocket, regardless of how much stake you have within that node. And yes, you're exactly right. You are randomly selected, or pseudo-randomly selected technically, with a set of nodes from the entire pool, right? So what happens is you actually get connected to between 5 and 10,000 nodes at once. And what right now we do off chain, but will happen on chain in the future, is that we pair you with a subset of those 10,000 nodes that are closest to you, right? So if I'm in Frankfurt or if I'm in Germany, I'll get connected to the nodes that are closest to the Frankfurt gateway, for example. So, and what I'm really excited about is in the future in V1 we'll have what we call geozones. So you can be in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and running a node, and you'll put in, when you stake as a node, hey, these are my coordinates, basically, and the protocol will automatically connect you with nodes within your region, which is something we're extremely excited about. But fundamentally, what we've learned to do off chain will be put on chain in the future, which we're extremely excited about.
That's amazing. So you don't connect with one node, right? You connect with a set of nodes. If there's
Yes.
one node that is a bad node and trying to make and not trying to make some try to change some data, I imagine that the protocol, since I'm connected to so many nodes, the majority wins. It's kind of like
Yeah.
this.
So applications can do what we call consensus checks. So since I'm querying many nodes at once, I can do the same request across all of those nodes and do kind of an off-chain consensus where, if two nodes respond with an answer of two, and then the other 50 respond with an answer of four, well, I know that those two nodes are either not synced or potentially lying, right? We find that the biggest issue is making sure that that the nodes are actually synced, less so being dishonest. But yeah, that's what's great, is that applications can kind of cross-check the data that they're receiving.
And all of these steps happens in less than 200 milliseconds. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not definitely a non-technical person trying to get into this work. And when we think about everything that happens behind the scenes and the speed that happens, it's amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Just when, so I'm self-taught. I'm a self-taught developer, and when I first made my first kind of HTTP request, like in code, I was just like mind blown at just, this is how the internet works. You know what I mean? It goes through all these steps for this information to be able to go from, you know, from my, I have Brave browser up right now, to, Crowdcast to you and back, all in, relatively real time. It's honestly kind of mind blowing and really inspiring, to be honest.
It is. It is. It is amazing future, and that's what I really like about Pocket, because when you think about this all infrastructure in the internet that we have today, there's so many things that are still centralized that we don't know, right? The non-technical people have no clue of how much centralization happens when you go to any website. From turning on your computers to accessing anything to do. There's a lot of centralization in this middle process, right? That we are, as a blockchain, as a crypto maniacs, we try to bring the values that we believe in. What decentralization is one of them.
Yeah, yeah. For me, the important part is that blockchains bring optionality. We don't live in a world where we have options, right? Like we have to use Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud, right?
Yeah,
We have to use Facebook. We have to use Instagram. We have to use Twitter. And there's no real options, and there's no real kind of substrate, pun intended, for Polkadot, but um, that allows people to build on top of, and it's all kind of just very siloed, right? And for me, what blockchains enable us to do is create an alternate system, and there should be space for centralized companies, but there should be space for alternate public goods that are just as good, if not better, right? Because we've lived in a world where there's been very frankly little competition across a host of industries, right? Like, I live here in Tampa, Florida. When I move, I get option for one ISP, one, right? And they have shitty customer service, right?
yeah.
Um, and that's what this allows us to really do, is actually kind of crack some of these ossified industries, and in many cases actually end up with a better quality of service, right? Which I think is just really critical for progress.
I think we can spend, like 2 hours talking about these, having this conceptual talk and talk about like where we want to see crypto in the future. For sure, it's a very interesting topic, and I think it should be mandatory. Everybody that starts in crypto, because basically that's what we're after, like all the stuff, and sometimes we lose track of it, for NFT projects or something that isn't actually meaningful to the space, So this is definitely very interesting.
Yeah. For some context, I think it'd be really, I always recommend the book where the wizards stay up late. It's about the very beginning of the internet back in the late 50s and early 60s. You'll see a lot of parallels with how the early ARPANET was built, to kind of how we're building today. So although I think for different reasons, back then the internet was being built to continue operating under nuclear disaster, but I think again, there's lots of parallels to that with what we're building.
The what's the name of the book?
Where the Wizards Stay Up Late.
Okay.
Really great book. Really, really great book.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I get a recommendation. I'll definitely take a look at it.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you can tell us a little bit. You mentioned about working in Pocket since 2016, right? Can you explain from where you guys started and where you guys are right now, like the infrastructure, the team behind Pocket, like uh, what is over there right now?
Yeah, bueno, para lo que hablan español, somos tres dominicanos y una colombiana
Right.
that started Pocket. We're three Dominicans and a Colombian. We're trying to come up with a joke that walk into a bar or something, but it still haven't gotten the inspiration yet. But yeah, we started. I actually worked at a startup with them previously, and we became very close friends through that startup. And we're like, hey, let's go build our own thing. And yeah, started us as four, and then Andrew joined us shortly thereafter, and now we've grown to around 60 people across 14 or 15 countries. I'd say predominantly Central and South America and North America, but we've got people in Australia and in Europe and even China at this point. So it's a pretty distributed team at this point, and we've always been remote from the beginning. So it's funny when we have meetings and a few of us are there early, we're speaking Spanish, and it's just like someone who doesn't speak Spanish comes in and like, okay, let's switch to English and have a common language. But it's an incredible team.
That's cool. 60 people, you said, right?
Yeah, 60, right around 60.
Crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy. I interview other projects, and they are all. Some of them are moving from the early stages, of course, to a more permanent project, like ongoing, living in the blockchain. But most of them is like 10, 15, 20, and I can see why you guys need 60 because there's a lot of infrastructure. You need a lot of skilled people to do what you guys are doing, right?
yeah. I mean, we've got our protocol team, we've got infrastructure team. They work on the supply kind of product side of things. We've got the demand engineers and product team, so that's the ones who build our portal and everything related to that. We've got a whole governance team because our DAO is really important to us. We've had that implemented since the beginning. So Jack and team are doing an incredible job related to governance, and then we've got our marketing team, right? All that kind of adds up to, in operations, we got all that adds up to 60 people. Yeah. I'd say it's about 60% engineering, and then the rest fills it out.
Okay, that's very interesting. So tell me, why did you choose Moonbeam? I'm sure you were in several networks, and you briefly explained like your talks probably with Derek like 2 years ago. But can you tell us a little bit more why Moonbeam in this context?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to the Polka House folks. We have a good relationship with them, and they've done really honestly, we like to work with people we enjoy working with, and every interaction we've had with you guys and your community and your teams, even within the general Polkadot ecosystem, has just always been incredible. And I believe we're going to live in a world with thousands and thousands of blockchains, and Moonbeam has been working pretty diligently on this for quite a few years. And given the progress, I think it made sense in terms of timing to be able to support you guys. And I think you guys have been steadily moving up the relay charts on Pocket, if I'm not mistaken, which is also pretty cool to see.
I would love to see this data afterwards. Should be interesting.
Yeah, if you go to poctscan.com .com, you'll see all the chains there, kind of like Etherscan, but PoctScan. Right. You see the charts there. So that's kind of like a community built block explorer that's got a ton of data and information on Pocket Network.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah, I see here. I'll dig down a little bit further. Maybe before you gonna show us some demo and how Pocket works a little bit more.
Yeah, this is from the developer perspective. So let me share my screen again, and I can show you kind of the experience that developers see when they use Pocket. This is the portal, the Pocket portal. This is kind of where you go to portal.pokt.network. You see there,
Okay.
but this is kind of the default page here. You can see how many relays we've done over the last 7 days. It's around 850 million or so. Every 24 hours, you get some latest block information. You see here, when I mentioned 15-minute blocks, I wasn't kidding. This one's actually a little bit faster, but
Why do you guys do 15 minutes? Because it's only for voting and changing something in protocol. Is that it?
yeah. So when I mentioned earlier, we're not meant to be a transactional cryptocurrency. What this 15-minute block time allows us to do is we have when relays or requests happen to the network, this is basically a signing game between the application and the nodes. And it's important to have enough time to have that information to submit into the Pocket blockchain. So what the 15 minutes allows us to do is basically pack as much information as possible within these blocks. Because what I can do is say, hey, if I do 1,000 or 10,000 or a million requests within a session, which is 4 blocks, so a session is about an hour, all I do is submit the root or one hash basically of those requests to the Pocket blockchain. Is kind of like a proof of work, right? So it makes a lot of sense to be able to submit that hash once every 15 minutes rather than once a minute, once every 5 minutes, once every 10 minutes, to save state and space within the blockchain itself. So it provides also, additionally, we are a Tendermint based chain, and 15 minutes gives plenty of time for our validators to come to consensus on the information that's being sent to the Pocket blockchain as well.
Okay.
So yeah, gives you a little performance here. The available networks that we support. We have 7 pages of it. You can see the Moonbeam and Moonriver mainnet here. And basically all you do as a developer when you start building is you go to apps. I'm going to let that load for a moment. But what you would do is hit create. And all you do is say, hey, test application, right? Select chain, Moonbeam, Moonriver, right? And you would say launch application. And bam, you would actually get an endpoint to actually start building your application. So it's extremely
And
easy.
we have to stake Pocket to get one of the applications.
Yes. So we provide a free tier. So we stake on your behalf, which is great. Sorry, this is taking a bit to load, but we have a free tier that allows developers to test things. We're actually switching to paid service quite soon. And that's very exciting for us because we have really, what we did in the last year or so was subsidize traffic to kind of prove that this network can operate at scale. And now that we've proven that, right, we've gotten to 1 billion requests a day. That's real meaningful scale. We've seeded the supply side of the network. We've really improved the quality of service. And now it's like, okay, now we need to charge, right? It's kind of similar to Uber subsidizing riders and drivers, getting network effects in different cities, right? And then, kind of reducing those as they grow. We're kind of in a similar situation, but this is what a developer sees when they actually log into the portal and create their own application. This one's for Avalanche. You can see here, this is kind of a test one, but this is what they use to actually build, right? So they copy this, they put it in the code, and then they start going, right? So you can see the success rate of the relays themselves. You can see the latency. You can see some of the information from the application itself, and you can kind of see the usage here, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So this is when they're creating the DApp, right? They have the smart contracts, they have the DApp. They need both the DApp, which is the website, right? Kind of to interact with the smart contract, and those Pocket app addresses, the public key, secret key, is what you put in as one of the inputs, right? When you're working in the Web3 module or palette, right?
yeah, it's actually this endpoint. So you'll see here.
Okay.
Um, you'll see here this is called an endpoint, and this is where the traffic gets sent in a certain format in the application.
Okay.
There's other kind of security things you can add in your application. So if I want to whitelist different URLs, even smart contracts or certain methods, even I can do that as a developer, right? And I can say if I want a private secret key as well, right? So it's kind of flexible depending on how open or closed or protected you want your application to be.
Okay.
And yeah, then very basic stuff like notifications. So if you're seeing your usage and this sort of thing as well. So yeah, that's kind of like what applications see, which is pretty cool. And it's very simple, 3 clicks basically, and you can endpoint and you can start building. And that's what's really important.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. I mean, we talked a little bit before we start the interview that I adventure myself in some smart contracts, and one of the times that I have some mental blocks is actually putting the smart contracts that I created, to the blockchain and trying to access that through the Web3 the website, and this was most of the tutorials about inferior, but this one is very straightforward. You just go over there and get the endpoints, right?
Yeah, and the documentation is also pretty good. So you have some little snippets and guides to help you build it as well.
That is pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Can you
Thanks.
tell us a little bit more about the roadmap? Like what can we see next?
Yeah. So in the near to medium term, we're adding what we're calling portal monetization. Somehow internally, this turned into calling it Pokemon. I don't know how, but that's a code name for the project internally now. I think Portmon somehow turned into Pokemon. I don't know what happened there. So that's a really big deal for us. It's going to allow apps to stake themselves into the current version of Pocket, and most importantly, we're launching. We're working on Pocket V1. So this is actually what we call V0, the current version of Pocket, and we're actually rebuilding the entire protocol from scratch. We're hoping to launch it next year, but we put out the initial specs January this year after working on it for about I think 7 or 8 months in terms of the spec of V1, and we actually launched our alpha prototype for this a few months ago, and the team's hard at work. We're actually using a different consensus algorithm called Hot Stuff. It's a bit more efficient for our own needs. But one thing I'm very excited about is that we get to call our because we're modifying Hot Stuff. We get to call it Hot Pocket, which I'm very, very excited about. But yeah, that's really what we're most focused on is converting the subsidized traffic to paid, and also working on V1, which is really what's going to allow Pocket to scale to, trillions and trillions of requests a day instead of billions.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Is there any place that we can take a look on the scope of V1, or this is an internal process?
No, it's all open source. In fact, even our roadmap, the team updates regularly. It's all open source and on our GitHub, actually.
Okay.
So I can find some links to share in a moment. But everything we build is open source. So nothing under the hood.
That is cool. That is so cool.
Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
There we go. I found it right here, actually. That was quick. So this is the information on V1 and our roadmap. So very excited.
Can you I don't know if that's going to be a long answer or not, but can you just explain briefly what is this new consensus about? What is the difference between what we're used to see?
Yeah, it's so the structure of the protocol changes just a little bit. What this really allows us to do is scale in a real meaningful way. Right now, I would consider Pocket like the Pocket core client, right? The node client, the validator client. It's what we call kind of a monolithic client, right? Everything is in one, blob of code, right? Um, with V1, we're separating the concerns and the actors a little bit better. And what that's going to do is allow people to scale different parts of the stack much more easily. Because all of our node runners run infrastructure at scale, it's going to be critically important, for them to not have to replicate the same database over and over and over, because that can get really expensive, for example, right?
Right.
And modifications to the consensus algorithm and these sorts of things allow us to scale to, eventually hundreds of thousands of nodes and this sort of thing, right? We have a new actor called a fisherman that helps increase the security of the network pretty massively. And also, one thing I'm very excited about is on-chain, basically on-chain SLAs. So today, we keep quality of service off-chain through things like the portal, where we do sync checks and latency checks and these sorts of things, right? All that's going to be put on chain in V1. So you're going to be rewarded based on your grade of how good of a provider you are. Today, the incentives are serve as many relays as possible. Tomorrow, it will be serve as many relays as possible, but in as high quality as possible as well. And that will impact your rewards as a node runner. And it's going to be on chain, which I'm extremely excited about. So
This is cool. It's like, well, the proof of stake is kind of like rewarding whoever stakes and get chosen. The proof of work is kind of the miners who produce a block. But I think you guys are going to the next step of rewarding in different ways, in a more customized way. Right? In this case, is for Pocket. Is that?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I would consider Pocket, while the integrity of the chain is protected by proof of stake, you are rewarded through useful proofs of work, right? So it's each cycle of compute that my server runs to serve a balance to some wallet. I'm actually getting rewarded for that work that my server or my computer is doing, right? And I'm putting the proof of that on the Pocket blockchain, right? Which is unique in the space in that respect.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah, very very exciting and a great interview, Mike. I think we can, we could speak for hours about decentralization, about like where we see in the future,
Yeah,
and I definitely would like to learn more about it. Maybe we can have a longer chat in the future. But I think this was a very good interview that summarizes pretty much what Pocket is. A little bit about the team and your view on it. So
yeah. Thank
I'd
you.
like to thank you. And first, do you have any final notes as something that you would like to share with our community?
Yeah, if you'd like to contact me, I think Twitter or Discord are probably the least noisy places to reach out to me.
Right.
It's my last name, but with an underscore instead of an apostrophe. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, or follow our kind of newsletters and blogs or anything like that as well, through POKT .network or at POKT network. So to keep
Yeah.
up with what we're scheming up. So
Yeah. And in your website, you can find the Telegram channel, Discord, everything, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all at the bottom of the website.
All right. Michael, thank you again so much for this interview, for your time. I had an amazing chat, and hopefully we can chat soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. Nice meeting you, Tiago.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
Thank you.